They say elephants never forget, and there have been plenty of stories about these gentle giants holding a grudge. But what do you do when you piss a tiger off? Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stranger Than Fiction podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the terrifying story of Vladmir Markov, a Russian poacher, and the tiger that he crossed. Let's get to it. This story takes place in a region of Far East Russia that is extremely remote and very unique. It's crammed between China and the Pacific Ocean and is known as Primorye. And here in this very specialized terrain is an indigenous people known as the Udegi. And they live alongside caribou, wolves, bears, and above all, Siberian tigers. And these are not your Tony the Tiger Frosted Flakes variation. These enormous cats grow to well over 600 pounds and 10 feet in length. Now, about 80 of these tigers live within the hunting grounds of the Udegi, and they are worshipped by these people as gods. The Udegi are known for their strong religious beliefs and practicing in animism, animal worship, and shamanism. It's said that the tiger and the Udegi are one. And as far as the Udegi people are concerned, it's a sin to kill a tiger. And for the most part, these giant Siberian tigers and the Udegi people live in peace. And while you've probably heard about tigers being man-eaters, this is normally the Bengal tiger in India, where they do in fact hunt humans. Now, unfortunately, in nearby China and Korea, the tiger's skin, bones, even the genitals are seen as valuable. But in Russia, it's illegal to kill tigers. But because of the proximity, poachers can easily access China and Korea, where they can sell the tigers that they kill, especially in remote places like Primorye, where there's still a little bit of government and mafia intermingling going on. And that is where this story begins. Vladmir Markov was a Russian poacher and part-time beekeeper who had frequented the area known as Primorye several times. You see, his hometown depended almost entirely on a state-owned logging company for its livelihood. And during the economic restructuring, it basically ceased to exist. This left Vladmir trying to make ends meet by living off the land. He started a honey-making operation and also began poaching with homemade bullets and unregistered guns, taking his kills to China and Korea, where he could barter for things like sugar and other essentials. Now, in my opinion, poaching is never the right thing to do. But for Markov, who couldn't even hunt legally because the approved guns were too expensive, he was put in a pretty tough situation. So while the legal term for what Markov did was poaching, I wouldn't really call it that. He was hunting for food for his family and using it to barter with. It was only illegal because he didn't have the money to own one of the state-approved guns. But as times got worse and more desperate, a sort of opportunity would arise that would push Vladmir to become, well, a real poacher. You see, eventually within their community, word got around about a Russian gang member who had offered to buy a tiger from a game warden for $50,000. And when Vladmir heard this, it was like an answer to all of his prayers. And this would cause him to venture deeper and deeper into the wooded region of Primorye and stay for longer and longer periods. As a former paratrooper and tracker, Vladmir definitely had the skills necessary to hunt big game. And he was very familiar with the area and comfortable with being out there for months on end. Now understand, Primorye is not a very hospitable environment. It's extremely remote. It's almost always covered in snow, and the temperatures are routinely in the -30s. So not only are the people that live there battle tested, but the animals are as well. So when you think of tigers, don't think of like the lean tigers that run through the short grass, as if that's not bad enough. But think of enormous, menacing creatures, tipping the scales at over 600 pounds with thick, dense fur, canines the size of dinner knives, able to leap upwards of 25 feet and move at speeds in excess of 40 miles an hour. They have eyesight 6 times better than ours. Their hearing is 5 times better than ours. And they have a ridiculous sense of smell. So the reports on how far Vladmir took his tiger poaching operation are pretty mixed, with some saying he routinely killed tigers for food and others saying he had killed tiger cubs and sold them. But what we do know is that on this particular day, Vladmir had been out hunting and was returning back to his camp, which was a small wooden shed out in the Tigra region of Primorye, accompanied by one of his hunting dogs. At some point during his walk, his dog ran up ahead, and when he caught up to it, there was a dead boar in the snow. Now, it was obvious to him that this boar had been recently killed by a tiger. So Vladmir looked around for any sign of the tiger. He didn't see anything. His dog didn't really give off any signals that he was worried about a tiger in the area, and Vladmir was not the type to look a gift horse or a boar in the mouth. So he started field dressing the boar right there so he could take some of it with him. You see, he's starving, his dogs are starving. As far as he's concerned, he thinks nature's looking out for him. Now you see, there's this thing in this region in Primoria where many people talk about tigers leaving food for them or them leaving food for tigers, and that's what Vladmir thinks this is. But it would be bad karma to take the entire boar. Besides, this boar is huge and he wouldn't be able to take all of it anyway. So he cuts off a little bit of the hindquarters and starts to pack that as he plans to take that with him. And as he's doing this, the tiger appears. Vladmir is obviously spooked. The tiger is obviously pissed because apparently he wasn't leaving anything for Vladmir. So the tiger comes walking up with evil intentions. Vladmir raises his rifle and cracks off a few shots. He hits the tiger and the tiger takes off into the forest. Now Vladmir assumes the tiger is gonna die and he'll just track it later, or at a minimum, he's at least scared the tiger off, so he's not really worried about it anymore. But remember, Vladmir has an older rifle and his ammunition is homemade. And this works fine for the smaller game in that region, but not for the thick hide of a Siberian tiger. So Vladmir takes the pieces of the boar and starts heading back to camp. And this is where the tiger exhibits qualities that we normally only apply to humans. Things like malice and forethought or premeditation. You see, the path Vladmir took was like one big loop. He went out one way as he was hunting and looped around the other way going back. Meanwhile, this tiger that he thought was dying had run off into the forest, rested for a little bit, then tracked Vladmir's scent and was headed down the other path of the loop back to Vladmir's camp. It's actually nothing but sheer luck that the tiger didn't choose the same path that Vladmir was already on. And tigers have phenomenal vision and don't forget faces. So he's seen Vladmir, he knows his scent, and he tracks it all the way back to this small wooden shack. And when he gets there, he is ticked off. He destroys everything that remotely smells like Vladmir. He drags his mattress out into the snow and rips it into shreds. He bites apart all of his tools and rips apart his axe handle. He breaks into this little small shack and just ransacks the place. Then he lays down on this tattered mattress in the snow and waits for Vladmir to return. Now, Vladmir is busy trudging through waist-deep snow. And Vladmir is not a tiger, so it takes him a few hours to get back to his camp. The tiger waits on Vladmir for about an hour or so, but when Vladmir doesn't return, the tiger runs off to go do tiger things. When Vladmir does eventually make it back to his camp, he sees how badly his camp is destroyed, and he realizes he's got tiger problems. Now, Vladmir is no fool, so he gathers his things and trudges a few miles further to a neighbor's house seeking refuge. But when he tells his neighbor what happened, his neighbor is like, nope, you can't stay here. So he goes a little bit further to another neighbor's house who allows him to stay there overnight. The next morning, Vladmir gets up and he heads back home, passing the first neighbor's house where he sees tiger tracks in the snow. Apparently the tiger had tracked him there, but it also tracked Vladmir's scent to a logging camp that Vladmir would frequent. Then after that, the tiger went back to Vladmir's camp, found him a concealed spot to hide, and waited. So Vladmir walks from his neighbor's house back to his camp, and he's on high alert. He has his gun at the ready. He's scanning everywhere looking for a tiger with every step. Mind you, it had almost been an entire day since he had first found his camp destroyed. So normally there would be little chance that the tiger would even still be in the area. But this was not a normal tiger. This was a tiger with a grudge. So as Vladmir arrives back to his house or shack or camp, whatever you want to call it, he approaches the door, and before he could even step inside, the tiger erupts from the doorway, takes out Vladmir's dog with one swipe of his paw, then leaps onto Vladmir and attacks him before he could even get a shot off. He drags Vladmir behind the little house and literally rips him apart. Now, Vladmir had a hunting buddy named Andre who was supposed to meet him at the cabin the day before. But Andre was a bit of an alcoholic. He had got drunk and fell asleep. So while all of this is happening, Andre is now on his way to the camp. So he gets there a few hours later, and during his walk up to the camp, he notices blood by the entrance road. He doesn't think too much about it because Vladmir is a hunter, but he's normally more careful because, you know, poaching is illegal, and Vladmir wouldn't normally leave signs for the authorities to see. So he's a little bit confused, but he keeps walking toward the camp. Then he sees Vladmir's hat, and he stops dead in his tracks. Fear and worry are starting to creep up his leg, and he's got this feeling in his gut that something bad has happened. He moves a little bit further, and then he sees tiger tracks. And even then, he's hoping that maybe Vladmir got hurt while hunting this tiger, and he's thinking of ways that he can help him, but nothing prepares him for what he finds. He continues walking further, where he sees pieces of shredded clothing from Vladmir, and then the severed paw of Vladmir's dog. Then he makes it just a few more steps, and he hears the low, distinct rumbling of a tiger. Andre freezes. He doesn't want to run because he knows then the tiger will chase him, and he doesn't even know where the tiger is. But he can envision this tiger somewhere very close, hunkered down in the snow over Vladmir's body. So Andre stands there for a minute, and then he turns around and he walks back to the shack, goes inside and closes the door. Now at this point, Andre is in complete shock, so everything he does seems pretty weird. He starts a fire, sits down, starts drinking some tea, and then starts chain smoking cigarettes. He stays in this cabin for a good amount of time, and he tries to leave several times, but it takes him a while to work up the nerve. Eventually, he does get up, and he heads back to town to get help. He also knows he has to tell Vladmir's wife what happened, but he can't work up the nerve to do it, so he gets a mutual friend to go with him to tell Vladmir's wife what happened to him. And when she hears the news, she absolutely falls apart. Vladmir hadn't been home in over a month, which was pretty normal for his hunting trips, but the news of him being dead crushes her. Meanwhile, the tiger has consumed most of Vladmir as it lay there in the snow, and now it has the taste for human, mixed with the fact that it was wounded from Vladmir's shooting, which likely made it unable to hunt the normal game that it would regularly eat. So it found another hunter and ate him too. So over the next few days, the wardens make it out to Vladmir's cabin to investigate, and all they find of Vladmir is a faceless head, a boot with a piece of leg sticking out, a shirt with an arm stuck inside, a severed hand, and a partially eaten femur. From there, they track the tiger and they find the remains of the other hunter, which consists of his watch and some blood-soaked clothing. So now the wardens are tracking this tiger to kill it. Now remember, everyone in this area is pretty battle tested. So the wardens are all like former military. They're very comfortable in the elements and very familiar with the area and the outdoors. Even so, with this 5 to 8 man team, the leader, a bulky guy named Yuri, is attacked as they track down this tiger, and he almost loses his life. As this is happening, the other wardens open fire and they kill the tiger. And this tiger in particular was over 9 feet from nose to tail and weighed about 500 pounds. Now again, there are some areas in India where Bengal tigers hunt humans and consider them a food source on some level, but up until this incident, there had never been a recording of a Siberian tiger tracking and hunting a single and specific human for no reason other than revenge. And that's where this story ends. Vladmir Markov did not make it out. He was a victim of the rage and cunningness and honestly the human-like premeditation of a Siberian tiger. And that's what happens when you piss a tiger off.